Okay. Got it. All right. I don't see Ed. Okay, there we go. If you're ready to go, Ed, let me know. I cannot have a different view here.
You are live streaming now, Henry.
We're live streaming now. Okay. Thank you. We would like to welcome any of our publics and parents that are listening to us on this beautiful December 15th as we look forward to the festivities. So welcome everyone. We would like to begin our meeting. I will call the meeting to order at 10:32. We'll ask our Trustee Leonard to lead us in our opening prayer.
Let's begin in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Direct, O Lord, all our actions by thy holy inspirations, and carry them on by thy gracious assistance, so that every prayer and work of ours may begin from thee and by thee, and be happily ended through Christ our Lord. Amen. Saint Thomas Aquinas,
pray for us.
Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Amen. Thank you, Trustee Leonard. And then I will ask Trustee Tagwood to please lead us in our land acknowledgement.
We are a party to Treaty 6, and as such, we wish to acknowledge that the land in which we gather is Treaty 6 territory and a traditional meeting ground for many Indigenous people. We recognize the diversity of First Nations who have at one time lived across the territory, as well as the presence of the Métis Nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Tagwood. Mr. Bouchard, do we have any of a public forum? No. Okay, we'll proceed accordingly then. I'd like to call for the approval of the agenda.
I can make that motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you. All in favor? All right. Carried. Thank you. We will ask the regular meeting for November 29th was attached. Any question, any comments, any corrections? Okay, I see no hands up. If there are no questions or corrections, I would like to ask someone to please make that motion. If we can use our, okay, if we can use the reaction with your hands up so then I can see it here, that would be very helpful for me. Thank you. I see Trustee Taylor Serwa's hands up. Go ahead.
Trustee Taylor, you're muted.
I'm sorry. I move that the board approve the minutes of the regular meeting held November 29th, 2021 as circulated.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay, any opposed? I see none. Thank you. We all have the board priorities there for our information as we continue to do this work. So please be mindful and keep looking and reviewing that. Okay. We'll move on to our action items. Policy 25, naming of facility. I'll defer that to Trustee Leonard, please.
Perfect. Thank you. So yeah, we discussed policy 25 in our last policy committee. That would be the naming of facilities. And so we wanted to present it to the board for first reading. So I guess I can make that motion and we can have any questions or discussion on that. So I will make that motion now, that the board give policy 25, naming of facilities, first reading as presented.
Okay. Thank you. We'll now move forward to discussions. We will go. Okay, I see Trustee Tagwood's hands up. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question regarding number 2.3. Just the wording of it, I found confusing. That the committee shall determine the process that will be followed in identifying which names get submitted to the board for consideration is fine. But then it says consultation with the board and the band. I think, did you mean there will be consultation with the board, comma, and the band may appoint a trustee? Because, or are you talking about consultation with the board and which band? I find that confusing,
Yeah.
the wording there.
Charlie, do you mind speaking to that one?
Sure. Thank you, Trustee Leonard. I think the intention there, and we could look at the wording of it, is that whether there's a First Nation trustee on this board, we could still have an appointed representative from that organization on the facilities committee that would look at names.
So by what organization? The
First
band
Nation.
that is the band that is affected by this change of name of facility, or just?
This isn't just for changing the names. This is naming facilities. Could be a new
naming a
school.
facility, yeah.
So whether it's naming a new facility or changing the name, this board could decide that they want a First Nations or a Métis representative on the naming committee. That's the spirit of that.
Other than the trustee, hopefully we will have a First Nations trustee. I just found the wording confusing, that you consult. So I think I'd like to relook at that wording to make it a bit clearer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see Trustee Miller's hands up. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Without looking necessarily at the specifics, I think between number 1 and 2, the authorization of the committee is good. And then under number 2, it kind of deals more with the composition, that area could be streamlined a little better, and to clearly identify, either leave the general statement of the education community and the stakeholders who should be part of the committee, or name everybody, because it kind of does in one and doesn't in the other. Number 2 deals specifically with the composition of the committee. So that just needs to be streamlined and cleaned up, I think. And to Trustee Tugwood's comment, the second part of 2.3, talking about the consultation with, is more of the process, not necessarily the composition of who is to be necessarily on the committee. That's the consultation process. So that would be my comments on the first reading of this, and I look forward to the second reading.
Thank you. Do I see any more hands? Okay. Okay, yeah. Trustee Lena, I see your hands up.
Yeah, sorry, I probably should have done this at the start too, just for greater context. I think a lot of this as well has been either taken directly from or used as consultation from the Greater St. Albert Catholic Schools Division. So there is some precedent for a lot of what's in here, and it has been utilized before. So it's not us just coming up with something completely brand new, but utilizing what they had It definitely has been adapted to our board in other points, but number 6 is more or less verbatim from Greater St. Albert Catholic Schools.
Okay. Thank you, Lena. Okay. So for myself, quick question. I wanted to see a little bit of a. So first question, would we have an appendix to this? And why the appendix I'm asking is some criteria at which some of these names will be, through which lenses are we going to be looking at these names. So to me, if we have to say, when we're looking at a name, we're looking at it through the work of that individual, through their spirituality that they've, through their contribution to church and community, so then that something of a guideline, so we don't have names all over the place from everywhere and anywhere. So to me, to make it look a bit pretty, a little bit of some appendix to show here are the 1 or 2, 3 criteria that we'll be looking at when we're looking for names. Is that something the committee could look at?
Yeah, we definitely could.
Okay.
There is already a little bit of, I guess, guidance for them. Like it must be approved through canon law in there. And then our Archbishop has to sign off on the name before it gets presented to the trustees as well. So I guess I would just ask for more clarity on, are you speaking specifically on historical aspect that we would need to look into, or what would your suggestion be?
So my suggestion is, so then when we go into our communities to say, okay, we're looking for a name, here is the criteria at which, when you're considering a name, you look at it, what is their contribution to church and community, right? What is this saints to you, if you're looking at the realms of saints and religious leaders of the church, right? So then that when the community is looking at a name, they are looking at it from 1 or 2, 3 lenses to say, yeah, this fits, this will be appropriate, we'll put this up for consideration. So that's just the quick of what I'm looking at, so then that you don't have community looking at a breadth of names with no context to it, right? So then there's some criteria at which is guided through that process. Okay.
Yeah, for sure, we can look into that.
Oh, thank you. And then with number 5, I was thinking if we could add, for what is reading, the board is responsible for approval of names of all division-owned facilities. Is there the appetite to add and properties, and reason why? Should we have a big plot of land and have a, say, football team, football field or a soccer field, right? That's our property. Are we able to name it? It's a facility, but on that property, again, are we able to name it as a separate entity to that facility? So just a suggestion to look at that, and properties. Okay. All right. Thank you, Jelena. I see no hands up. Okay. All right. So based on your suggestion, then I would like, if there are no questions, I would like to call the question now. Okay. All right. I would like to call the question. See all in favor? See by hand. Okay. Okay. Okay, I see no opposition. Thank you. So this will go for first reading. Thank you all again. Perfect. Okay, 4.2, leaders of tomorrow. I believe you all got a background information. As the trustee, the local trustee, I will ask for any questions. Is there any questions for me? Go ahead, Trustee Miller.
Thank you. I couldn't get to the reactions fast enough. Well, I've heard of this before, but being unfamiliar, how is the Leaders of Tomorrow board linked to our division?
Okay. The context is we are a community, and the Leaders of Tomorrow goes right from Wetaskiwin into the county, including Millet. It's open to all community individuals, including our schools, and then churches and everybody could nominate. Okay. How is our board linked to? When we were gold reps on there with $1,000, we were at a table. We were at a table. So now that we downgraded to, even though we are not at the table, I know the board has some community members as well as donors involved at that table when the nominations and things are being discussed. So for sure, we are represented, I know, as community members, as well as RPS, who are they host and support this program with a lot of other logistics to it. So they are always permanent members as well as other donors within the community. So I believe for your questions, yes, we are represented. That's the short of it. Yeah. Okay. Any other question? All right. If I can then please move forward to ask someone to make that motion. See.
I move, Mr. Chair, that the board continue its support for the Leaders of Tomorrow program in Wetaskiwin for the 2022 operating year in the amount of $500.
Thank you, Trustee Burke. Call the question. Okay, all in favor? Okay, any opposed? I see none. Thank you. Item 4.3, budget 2022. If I can defer that to Mr. Bouchard and Latka to talk money and see if we have any money left. Thank you,
Mr. Chair. So you have before you a backgrounder that gives a little bit of historical information on how the division is funded under the new funding formula, which came in about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. In essence, we're funded 50% on our projected enrollment. What's been challenging is just when this funding framework came into being, COVID came. And what's proven problematic is trying to predict the number of students we're going to have in COVID times. And last year was especially problematic. So typically Star Catholic has grown, anywhere between 3 and 5% per year. So in 20, we kind of followed that trend data and did the same. And we were quite a ways off. But interestingly enough, that was the trend across the province as well. So there was a lot of lobbying by ASBA to the ministry saying, look, at divisions are going to be in a tough position here because everybody's enrollment numbers are off. And there were quite a few kids that were, for lack of a better term, in the wind. People didn't know where they were at. So through the great advocacy of ASBA, the ministry did hold divisions harmless, which was great. Now, when we predicted our enrollment last year, we had to have it submitted in early January. Again, not knowing what COVID would be like in our current year, we did a small projected enrollment, a small increase of about 100 students, which wasn't typical with our 3 to 5%. I think it was conservative, but we were trying to be optimistic that the students that were, in the wind, so to speak, would come back to Star Catholic. So that didn't happen, we found out in September. So here we are, down about 150 students. And when we do the quick math on that, we are estimating that to be about 1.4 million. So what will happen is when the province releases their allotment or allocation to Star Catholic this spring, we anticipate being down 1.4 million. Now, Donna, maybe you could jump in when I'm done, but I don't know if, I believe there's been some talk at ASBA about, this kind of a second year of hold harmless. I'm not sure. Secretary Treasurer Lotka informs me that in the province, there are about 11,000 students less this year. Again, nobody knows where they are. Did they all leave Alberta? I don't think so. Some may have, some may be, again, unaccounted for. So I think some advocacy could be done with ASBA on that front again. However, we meet with administration in early January. And it's important at that time that we have a good kind of idea of where we're headed. So we have a pooling meeting where we talk about, what are we going to pool our resources for as a division, to kind of fund the collective work. So for example, on the other side of the building from me is the COLT team and the student learning support team. Upstairs are the technicians. Those are all pooled items. If ever we had to find 1.4 million, we would have to look at all of that. We would have to look at reducing teachers, EAs in schools, etc. So it's important when we meet in January that we have a sense. Are we looking to find $1.4 million or not? Even last year, we were kind of in that mode, waiting to hear back from the ministry. So why I bring it to you in this backgrounder is we do know from the audited financial statement that the division had about $2.4 million in unrestricted reserves. Administration is seeking a board motion that would take 1.4 million of that to offset the anticipated shortfall. If the board were to approve the motion, we could keep the status quo with staffing, because over 90% of our budget is staffing. So it would mean that our schools could continue with the current staffing allocations. The second part of that is it would leave the board with a $1 million unrestricted surplus, which meets the target that the board has set in the past of 5 operational days. So it's kind of keeping, that's kind of the emergency fund, for lack of a better word, that the board typically, and school boards across Alberta kind of follow that same format. If the board does not approve the motion, then that's direction to administration that we need to, kind of sharpen the pencil, and we're going to have to do some cuts. So I'm happy to entertain questions or comments. Obviously, it's a big ask, and it does have significant impact on the division for next year.
Trustee Tagwood, I see your hands up. Thank you.
Yes, I'm just going to speak heads to ASBA. Now, ASBA is an excellent advocate for the school boards. We are not the only school board, as you said, that is facing this problem. In fact, Calgary Catholic has come out and said they expect an $8 million shortfall. So we're not the only ones. We've asked that we advocate to the minister again for hold harmless year. Every time they've met last year, it was hold harmless, hold harmless, hold harmless, and it will be again, but there is no guarantee for that. So in my opinion, it's just my opinion, I think we should go ahead with approving this motion.
Thank you, Trustee Tagwood. Do I see any other hands? No. Okay, Trustee Miller.
Thank you, Chair.
Go ahead.
So just, well, first I have a clarity question. So we in November moved money into reserves, and now we're looking at and considering making a motion to remove $1.4 million from that reserve. So first of all, I think it's really important that we keep the status quo. Our students and our children in our schools need the status quo. They need the help. They need the teachers. And I think this, I will be voting in favor of this, but I would like to comment that although we're dwindling our reserves down to a standard of 5 operational days, we can't keep going like this. So the advocacy on the funding area will be really important going forward. And I guess my last question is, in the past, that the board has made motions to have money supplement transportation fees. If we remove the $1.4 million, is there room to carry forward? You know, if that comes across that we need to make a decision on that, is there going to be room to be able to make a decision like that in the future for transportation, seeing that insurance fees are going up in that area? But or would that be included with the 1.4? Does that kind of cover it, or is it just kind of operational fees as far as staffing goes that the 1.4 would be used for?
Okay, I'll attempt to tackle those questions.
Yeah.
So yes, the board with the AFS, you know, had a confirmed 2.4 million. And when it comes time to pull the trigger on the budget, like if the board were to approve this motion, it doesn't mean that we would ask the minister to transfer that money tomorrow, for example. We would wait until it's our budget time. So that would happen in the spring. We would wait to see if the minister will make a decision on hold harmless. If she were to come out with a statement to say that they aren't, then at that time, we would submit the request to the Minister of Education for approval to move that money out of the 2.4. And then it would be done at that time with ministerial approval. So I hope I'm answering that piece. Regarding the transportation fees, those are set annually by the board. In this status quo budget, there is money that comes out of instruction to support transportation. But through the Finance Committee, there is a review of all fees that the board approves. And that's where the board sets a variety of fees, including transportation. That's done annually. So that's a separate process. And that's reviewed every year. So that's not necessarily part of this in a sense. I hope that answers that piece. And then, sorry, I think there might have been another question in there, Trustee Miller. Did I miss one?
No, it's the transportation and then the clarity. So
yeah,
I believe you've answered it all.
Secretary Treasurer Lotka, did I miss something on that front?
No, I think just to add to your point is that asking for a $1.4 million is we're supporting the entire division budget, in specific with transportation, because we do a transfer and reallocate not only the funding that's calculated by the framework, but also looking at moving funds over to help support our transportation system. This 1.4 would look to maintain that status quo and that transfer could continue to happen.
The only other thing that I would add to the kind of the information is we have not had any discussions with our administrators other than in September when we told them that our enrollment was down as a heads up, as we did with you as trustees back then. So they're already have their hats on knowing that it's going to be a tough position. So this would be most welcome if the board were to approve this motion.
Thank you.
My comments to this discussion is, and pretty much this is from a line of work, knowing some of this as a social worker. And I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of families that, even though it's legislated, have kids home, that they are not going to go to school and they won't be registering with any until they know where this pandemic is and what is going on. So that is what is accounting for all of some of these, because the situation is there for every family is different based on their medical needs and everything. So some of these decisions some families have made. With regard to hold harmless, that again, when we do have the opportunity to meet with our politicians, or you see a politician having coffee, keep reminding them, because again, that's where the shortfall is coming from. And thankfully last year they did it. Can they do it one more year? That will be very, very generous. But we all do know the state of the economy. So definitely it's wait and see. But there's some hope on the horizon, considering some of the federal budget that came out, anticipated loss, but I believe there's some gains in there. So what is the provincial one looking like? I don't know, but we hope that there will be some gains, and then that again will translate onto school boards to try and get out of this pandemic with not much. As what in the past, as the board, we've made that conscious decision that we will be spending whatever money we have on our current student. We've made that conscious decision because there's no reason to be holding money when the need is now. And like Mr. Bouchard stated, we will always would like to support the need of our current students. So I will encourage all trustees again, when it comes to it, when you are advocating, we don't have money, 2.4, we move in 1.4, $1 million for 5 days, that's it, right? So again, you can categorically tell your public and your constituents, we don't have money if they think others have more money. Yes, every school board is different, and we have 2.4. We're taking 1.4, right? So we don't have that money. Okay. I see Trustee Leonard's hands up, and then we'll go to Trustee Tagwood.
Charlie, you had your hand up first, I think.
Sorry, I didn't put up the symbol, so my apologies. If I have to go to the back of the line, that's fine.
Okay.
Sorry.
I just had a question. So regarding this, if we're not held harmless at the end of this year, and the trend remains the same, that we keep, I guess, bleeding out students, do we have any, I guess, plans to protect against that? So one of the things I was thinking was, I know you guys had tried doing online school, and that could be something that would increase enrollment as well, or things of that nature, just so we're looking further ahead from this just worst case scenario.
Yeah, thank you for the question. To answer that, so yeah, we do have the outreach school. There wasn't enough interest from parents for the online school last year to do it again this current year. So that's why we don't have one this year. But what I will say is, so Secretary Treasurer Lotka and myself over the last week have been working with schools to submit for January 5th the next round of projected enrollment. And we've been ultra conservative in that approach. So I think right now The rough number, and again, it's not finalized, but it's looking like we're predicting a growth of 7 students. So that's pretty conservative. I think we're trying to take the approach that, we're going to try to be ultra conservative this year and not predict any percentage kind of growth. So that's where we're at on that. So I think that should put us in a good position not to end up in this again next year.
Okay.
And then why I had my hand raised is you will, just related to your advocacy work, the standard response from government is always, there's no more money. There's no more money, right? They have a fixed education budget of 8.21 billion. I think the advocacy response is there are 11,000 unfunded students right now. Use that money to hold divisions harmless. So you're not asking for more than 8.21 billion. You're just asking that the savings that they have for not funding those 11,000 get repositioned to divisions who have, experienced a significant enrollment issue. That's that's a win-win. Then the province doesn't have to say they don't have the money, and you're not asking for more money. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good point. Trustee Tagwood.
That's a very good suggestion about the 11,000. I think we will hear that of the 11,000, they're providing support for a lot of homeschoolers. However, we know homeschoolers do not receive the same amount financial support as children in school. So it's still a viable option to use that as part of our advocacy. And I think it's really important that, again, when we're talking with our MLAs, that we mention this, hold harmless, hold harmless. So they get really used to that phrase. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Tagwood.
Mr. Chair, could I just ask Secretary Treasurer Lotka to, if you could share, it's my understanding that the 11,000, the homeschooling students are in that number. Maybe you could comment on that, Secretary Treasurer.
Yeah, and it was done through an association, the Alberta School Business Officials Zone meeting, that some information was shared with regards to the enrollment trends province-wide. And that enrollment, from my information, was total enrollment. So whether they were funded or unfunded or homeschooled, it was the number of students being reported essentially to the province that had decreased by about $11,000 from last year. And that was a decrease from the previous year from there. So that decline in total enrollment, as far as the province's requirement for any student to be registered with them, whether with the school authority, whether they're at home, or whether they're attending a program that's just under the approval of the minister. So a homeschooled situation, homeschooled with registered through a school authority or registered through the minister would also be included in those numbers. There's a very raw number. So I think certainly that there's a decline in enrollment, the exact figure, and for comparability, kind of watching to see when some public figures are actually announced.
So they're down about 11,000 students. Is that what they're saying?
That was the preliminary information I got. I won't say just disappeared. It's just that the comparable numbers said that there's 11,000 less.
Okay, thank you.
All right. See no hand up, so I would like someone to make the motion, please. Okay. Trustee Taylor Sarwa, Finance Chair, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to make the motion that the board approve the allocation of $1.4 million of the unrestricted surplus to offset the anticipated shortfall in the 2022 budget, subject to the approval of the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Trustee Sarwa. See, all in favor? Okay. All right. Trustee Leonard, I didn't see your hand. Where are you? Okay, there we go. Thank you. and this is carried. All right, we'll go to item number 5, committee reports. So I will defer that to Trustee Taylor Serwa. There are any questions for the chair? Okay, I see no hands up. All right. Trustee Serwa, any comments to add on?
No, Mr. Chairman, you all received it in your, you all received the info in your package.
Okay, just 1 second. I see some hands up now. I scare them and they lift their hands up. Okay, we'll start with, Trustee Tagwood, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question about the nutrition grant funding, the 88,000 the accumulated unspent nutrition grant funding. Has that already been dispersed to the schools? Is that what provides the fresh fruit that goes into each classroom every once a week? Is that where that comes from? That was my question.
Yes, it is. And as stated in the report, it will be sort of divvied out to the people who need it on an application basis.
So the school has to apply for a certain amount, and then it's decided by administration which schools get which amount. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct to my knowledge. Is that correct, Dan?
There's 2 components to the nutrition grant. The first one is the annual funding. This 88,000 is accumulated surplus. So all of our schools get their annual allocation for the current year funding. What we were finding was that with this surplus is that some schools maybe didn't have the need that the funding provided on a per student basis. So rather than redistribute it on a per student basis, administration thought that it would be more appropriate with the schools that had maybe greater need than what their annual allocation could provide, that they could have access to this pool of funds moving forward. So I think the distinction there is that every school still gets a per student amount. This is just accumulated unspent funds from all of the schools accumulated from prior years that would be redistributed upon application. Does that answer your question, Trustee Tugwood?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Okay, Trustee Miller.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment about the committee members. Could we just add the ex officio name under the committee members? Or add board chair?
That is doable. Thank you. Any other question? Any other question? No? That was a short one. Okay, so I do like the approach by administration simply because we all know our communities and there are greater needs in certain communities than the other. So instead of the wholesale approach, this will really cater for and the intent for that application and that grant. So thank you, administration, for looking at it from that angle. Okay, we will move on to policy. Move you to Trustee Leonard. If you have any questions for him. Okay, I see Trustee Tagwood, your hand is up.
Yes, I just have one minor question. So you said the trustees reviewed outstanding board direction regarding policy 7 and 21 and made notes for future discussion. So is there going to be changes to those policies or appendix that will be brought to future board meetings? Is that the plan?
There could be. So it was brought to us regarding that one, policy 7. And so policy 7 was, whether the per diem for the committee of the whole meetings on the same day as the regular board meetings, whether those could be claimed. And then the other one, policy 21, was the HPV and vaccination policy, whether that's necessary. We didn't really go in depth because we knew we were going to be reviewing them, the 9 per meeting. So when we get to those ones, which policy 7 will come up in our next meeting, we will address those specific concerns.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I see no any other hands up. Thank you, Trustee Lena, for that clarification. Would I move to zone 2-3 reports? I would defer that to Trustee Tagwood. If there are any questions for Trustee Tagwood?
There was quite a bit that I put in here. It's been very busy at ASBA 2-3. And we also just want to let everybody know that we support you coming to some of the meetings. Is there any questions regarding my report?
When is the next meeting?
The next meeting is January, let's see, January 28th at 9:30. And also in that meeting, there's going to be some professional development as far as Robert's Rules of Basics. And all trustees are really welcome to take this. I'll be getting a bit more information as to just when that professional development will be, whether it'll be the afternoon or just part of the morning. And I will let everybody know as soon as I know, because I think it's a really excellent professional development for us to be looking at. Dawn, you have a question.
Thank you. My question is around the 3rd or 4th item there, talking about the Parent Advisory Council, Teacher Advisory Council, and the Youth Advisory Council. I'm just wondering if you could expand on what the trustees' concerns were on the work of those ministers' councils and how that might overlap the work of the trustee.
Thank you for the question. A good question, because some of the trustees were concerned that we would be doing the same kind of work, and they wanted to know just what the perimeters were for each of those councils. And I see they've just appointed the names and of each one. The government representative was going to get and have a look at that and get back to us. As far as I know, the minutes are not going to be made public. So some of the trustees were just concerned that they'd be working on the same things we're working on. So we'll have to wait to the next meeting to get the answers from the Alberta Education representative. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. And like you stated, I did forward that out when those appointments were made public. So we'll just wait and hear from that clarification, so then that we don't have the duplicated duplicated items as we are pretty much the elected body, right? So what are they coming to do, or what are they doing to support our better education? Once that is clarified, we can go from there.
Yes, thank you.
Trustee Miller, no, that's it. Okay, we'll move on then to item number 6, in camera, and everyone is entitled to remain. So I'll have somebody make that motion, please.
I could move us into in camera.
Thank you.